Alrighty, so we put together a group of panelists here to kind of end the day. This is always the hardest panel of the conference because you can see we're thinning out a little bit here. But so what I wanted to talk about is a pretty big, concept of, API ecosystems and platforms. So what we did here is I kind of brought together, people I feel that are working at from different angles. We got a couple of the back-end as a service people represented. We've got our security guy way over there in the chair, and then we've got back-end as a service, but API management, kind of enterprise middleware. So I think it's a nice mix of people. So we're going to talk about what is a platform, what are ecosystems, and so there's your guys' mic right there. So. You guys can share that one amongst yourselves. Test it out and make sure it works, Richard.
Testing.
All right, we're good to go. So if you would, let's go down the panel and introduce yourself, say who you work for, kind of what you bring to the table, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm John Mathon. I'm Vice President of Market Strategy for WSO2. We are a company that makes a platform of some 20 different components that all fit together to create what we call a connected business platform, which includes API management, PaaS technology, cloud technology, and most of the traditional middleware pieces. We are engaged in a lot of enterprise deals where we deliver platforms, and some of which are used in an ecosystem type manner that we can talk about in more depth. The platform term is a much overused term. People, well, I don't know if it's overused. It's just used a lot, and it's overloaded, I guess, in a lot of ways. I guess a platform is simply something you build on top of that gives you some utility in helping you build something. So it can be pretty diverse, but Gartner and some others have defined enterprise platforms to include like a whole set of well-defined things. And if you use that definition, then that's what that is. If you're talking about an API platform, it probably consists of the components that we think of in an API management platform. So, but when you're talking about an ecosystem, I think an ecosystem is a set of participants, companies that work together to create value. And each participant participates in that business process that is creating value in some way, and tying them together electronically, creating a platform that enables that ecosystem to function better through APIs. That's sort of the value proposition we're involved in, and finding a bunch of customers are interested in that sort of what I call an extended value chain. I'll let other people talk.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. My name is Richard Mendis. I'm the Chief Marketing and Product Officer for a company called AnyPresence. And we are an enterprise backend as a service company, but we also do some work on generating code for the front end, the user interfaces for various different channels. So with respect to developer ecosystems and whatnot, we've been working with some interesting companies who view APIs as kind of like the starting point for their ecosystem, right? It's like they're the letters of the alphabet, if you will, right, in the communication analogy. And so once you have letters of the alphabet, you can now start communicating with developers both inside the company and outside the company. They need to take those letters, string them together to form words, string the words together to form sentences, and so on and so forth, and eventually we'll get to, hopefully, a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. But what we're trying to do is help companies put platforms on top of those alphabets that they've created so they can get faster or sooner to the development of a novel for either external or internal developers.
Hey everybody, my name's Sid Maestri. I'm the platform evangelist at StackMob, and we are a backend as a service company as well. I think our goal is to help developers quickly add backend functionality to their apps with an emphasis on mobile. So we take care of common tasks like data storage, user management, push notifications, integration with social networks, and then the ability to connect with third-party APIs through custom code. So those are the things that we focus on and just making it a very easy and rapid experience through an API for developers to get their apps up and running.
Thank you. My name is Andy Thorai. I'm the CTO for the app security and big data group with Intel. Before today, or before yesterday, how many of you knew that Intel does API? That's not bad. That's more than I would have expected. So yes, Intel does API, right? And by the way, I decided to sit so far out from Ken because I was afraid there'll be an FBI detail right next to you.
Different today. This is a different day, man. That was
API,
yesterday.
FBI. So as far as the platform and ecosystem, try to make the answer somewhat simple, right? Rather than giving an academic term, when I show up at customer side, I talk to a lot of C-levels. The first question they ask me is that, so I got all this stuff that I'm trying to build. People are forcing me to build more stuff. Should I have to build everything out, or can I just pick something from here and there and put them all together and offer it to my customers? In my mind, that's a platform, right? So essentially, you're picking the best out of other available APIs or whatever else you want to call it. Combine them all together, offer it as a platform for your consumers to consume. That, in my mind, is a platform. And to answer your other question about ecosystem, the same question they ask, I have all this gobbledygook that I built over years, so I call that as an ecosystem. Can you participate in that? And if you can make it work with that, yes, you participate in the ecosystem. If you don't, if you make them build all of it, they're going to leave and go to someone else.
So Sid, while we're on that, I kind of want to push on you guys for talk to me about the role of, the marketplace in this, as far as, I'm a platform, I'm going to build a lot of the core features of the platform that people are going to operate on. But talk to me about, the role of the marketplace in opening up the doors to allow other people to add in features and to add to my platform for my users. We're talking iTunes, Google App Marketplace. I know StackMob is a pretty strong thinker in this area. So talk to me a little bit about how the marketplace influences, me being a platform, but feeds into the whole ecosystem story.
Sure. So last November, we launched a marketplace, and we're one of the few back-end as a service companies that did this. And we definitely came at it from the point of view of we didn't want to have to build everything ourselves. It didn't make sense. If there are other API providers like SendGrid for email or PubNub for real-time messaging, we could build that functionality into our platform, but for us, it made more sense to partner with people who were already well-known to developers for both marketing as well as technology reasons. So for us, it was all about building a conversation with the people that we wanted to partner with and who wanted to work with us, and not just partner with just anybody. So when you open up the platform, that's something you really have to consider is, who do I want to work with? Who's well-known in the industry and respected as far as a partner, because it's really a partner when you open up a marketplace. You're forming a relationship. I mean, I'm sure Apple's developers or Android developers see that when they join the App Store, they're in partnership with Apple now. If the iPhone does well, then they're going to do well with their apps, hopefully.
Richard, what's the enterprise looking for in this way? I mean, what do they demand when it comes to their backends?
Sure. I think what's interesting is, along with this whole trend of consumerization of IT, what's very interesting to see is the enterprise is also adopting these concepts like marketplace, but they're internal to the enterprise, right? So, for example, we've opened up, we've had to open up for our customers not just the ability to connect, like StackMob did very well externally to, SendGrid for email or Twilio for SMS, but allow developers within the enterprise to write custom authentication adapters for various different systems or custom connectors for various different systems. And the reusability availability of those systems on a platform is very important to the enterprise, right? So if somebody in the marketing department builds a, Marketo connector or something like that, and someone in sales needs to leverage that sometime in the future, the ability for them to go onto an internal platform or marketplace, select that connector, and leverage it in their application is extremely valuable.
Interesting. So taking this to another level, the marketplace concept, and we think about marketplaces in the sense of applications. When it comes to API, platform, John, I think a lot of people, you have your API up till now. Amazon's got their API, Twilio's got theirs, but is it possible to have one platform be an API marketplace? Meaning, can I have different faces to my API developer area for different people? Can I create more than one storefront for my API platform?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, just even today, I was talking to people who want to do that. It's a very common thing to take your APIs and then target them at different markets and want to create essentially a new store experience for each market. If you think about it, what you're doing with your APIs is you're going to take all these assets and then you're going to try to create new products, new services, and collaborate with different groups, and being able to put those together in different combinations and offer them as a different combination of platforms or solutions to different markets is something that a lot of people want to do. So that's something we're seeing. We're also seeing that big enterprises, a lot of them are trying to establish themselves in this ecosystem market now by creating these ecosystems. It's really a land grab. I look at it right now. It's people going out and trying to find partners and create the first area in each sort of industrial segment or each application area. And it's kind of exciting to see all these companies vying and trying to create these new marketplaces and new ecosystems and see who will win out of all this. Pretty exciting.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? API. I mean, so hand it down to Andy, because I want to talk about that as, like, Laura touched on it, composite, APIs, partners. We see it out in the space. We see Twilio and SendGrid. When you go out on the road, you see Twilio and SendGrid almost always together out there because they complement each other, because they're two features that I think go side by side for developers. But when we start talking about creating API marketplaces, app marketplaces, whether you're one enterprise or whether you're a partner trying to rapidly build these, I mean, talk to me about different approaches to this from an enterprise standpoint. How do we use, gateways or platforms in any way to rapidly assemble backends for different uses, for different partnership kind of?
Right. So I'm going to take a little bit different view than the social view from the enterprise side. So there are a couple of conversations I had in the last few weeks, which was rather surprising. So I was meeting with this pharma company, a big shot in there, a C-level executive, a business level executive, and we are having a conversation. And then he asked me, Andy, who do you think we are? Where do we make our most money or going forward in the next 5 or 10 years? I knew it was a trick question, of course, right? So I'm trying to say that, trying to come up with sophisticated answers. And finally I said, look, you guys are drug manufacturers, so that's where your money is. He says that's not true. What we want to become is that we have all this information assets about things like diseases, treatments, geographical information of who's infected with what area, what works best, and where we are not selling good, where we want to sell more, all those kind of things. And so that information, if you are to provide to users as an API, it's great. So we're continuing the conversation. That's about, yes, exposing the information and assets and providing APIs and making value out of that, right? But then he says, well, that's not where I want to stop. I want to keep going to a level that I want to integrate my so-called API platform with other platforms, right? So let's say there's an insurance company out there or companies out there, multiple platforms, and then the provider platforms out there, and then the hospital platforms out there, which has the patient information and stuff. I want to build a holistic platform for somebody who's trying to access information. They shouldn't worry about where do I go to get that information. I don't want to go there, here, there, and get that information. I want to be the provider of that mashed up information to the consumer, right? So if somebody makes a call, I will deliver the information they wanted, but then I will make sure that I'll go to all these places, get the information, provide to them. So that's one. And then I was in a conversation with a large transactional financial institution, bank-ish, right? And then they want to take it even to the next level. You talked about the marketplace. They say, yeah, we want to build a marketplace, but we don't want that to be just somebody comes and take our APIs and build it, so we put that in there. We want to take it even to the next level. We want to become what they call it as a marketplace of marketplaces. They want to go to other marketplace feeds and able to pull up that information and set policies and contracts based on where you're getting the feeds from. So if you have your own marketplace that your developer developed for your internal, the contract, what you said that for would be a little bit different than if you are to get from one of your partner sites, pull up an application, put it in here, the contract for that would be a little bit different based on your agreement. So I see the platform of platforms concept is gaining momentum. Where is it going to go? I don't know, but at least the visionaries are thinking, and I'm glad to be talking to them, right?
Yeah. So how's this work in the mobile? I'd love to hear Sid and Richard you talk about. I mean, you guys are pretty heavily focused on mobile, but I mean, backend as a service really is for any type of app. So when it comes as we're moving into Internet of Things, it's not just mobile, it's not just web, it's not, it's devices. I'm a healthcare. Can I come to the StackMob Marketplace and find what I need easily, or do I have to wade through a lot of other sectors and to get what I need? Can it be a one-stop shop?
Well, for right now, I don't think that we're that focused in saying that this is one segment, this is the healthcare segment, or this is the retail segment for APIs. Right now, we've got, I believe, about 18 different API partners, so it's manageable to browse through that and find what you need. But we have, I mentioned custom code. It's pretty much an open API endpoint that you can write your own code and write your own integration. So it's really flexible. So if you did want to integrate with some other API that's not part of our marketplace, we make that really easy for them to do. As far as where it's going to go from where we are today, I thought what was interesting was we found that API Spark had done a tutorial about how to take an API that an app developer had built on StackMob and then expose that back-end API to other developers. So it started feeling very meta, whereas like we built our platform for a developer or a company or an enterprise to build an API for their custom app. But then API Spark is turning that around and saying, no, why don't you take that API you're using for your app and now expose it to other developers? And I thought that was really kind of a cool concept. And if they're talking to SendGrid through our API, then you're going one level deeper. So where it's going to go from here, I actually am pretty inspired by what we saw here with the session about debugging and monitoring of APIs. I mean, building those sort of tools into your marketplace and platform, I think will become more and more necessary as you have more APIs you're talking to and developers want to have more insight into what's going on inside of their apps. Just my thoughts.
So on the topic of Meta, we actually launched a product a couple months ago called a Meta Platform. And what we did was we wrapped an API around our designer. So rather than going through a website to define a backend as a service with your hands and generate it, you can programmatically connect to AnyPresence and generate a backend service. So we have customers now who are essentially putting us on top of their API management layer and generating cross-platform SDKs, not just for mobile, to your point, it's endpoint agnostic. But they're taking that and rather than putting something in a AnyPresence marketplace or a StackMob or some other BaaS or consolidation marketplace, they themselves are creating kind of an open marketplace for their industry so that developers can come in and rather than interpreting their APIs, they can say, I want to build a new app and select some of the features, and they will essentially get a set of SDKs purpose-built for what they selected for the different endpoints that they want. And I think that's fascinating. I mean, to the analogy again of stringing letters together to form words, they're giving people pages or books as starting points rather than just the letters.
There's an analogy that happened in the enterprise world many years ago. I started a company called Tibco Software, and we, as we put this publish-subscribe paradigm out, and people could, access information in the enterprise for the first time in an anonymous publish and subscribe way. People started building all kinds of applications and using information in ways you never anticipated, and new sets of applications got built on top of that, and they've become the standard pieces of the middleware bailiwick, or whatever you want to call it. But I think that's where we're going with all of this, is these APIs form a community of products, and you could think of them, as data sources or services or whatever, and we're going to see really creative uses of those outside of these even marketplaces. People will be building all kinds of interesting things, and I hope to see a lot of interesting new applications, new technologies. And it's not going to be easy. Building applications in the enterprise works because you know that each of the APIs that you use are backed by the company's promise that you're going to make these things reliable. They're going to be there. The company sets a standard, says, "You're going to build this, then we're going to support it." When you go to the greater world and you say, like, I'm going to build something that's going to depend on 5 APIs, what guarantees do you have these companies? What are their SLAs? What are these things going to be around? If they're not, how does that work? How do you make that reliable and trustworthy? We think there's a long way to go before we get to a world where we can leverage these APIs really effectively in as open a way as I think we all like. A lot of other things I could say, but
Yeah, so I mean, from a technical standpoint, platform to ecosystem, starting to feel like the movie Inception or something. Like we got like multiple layers, and almost kind of Matrix-like, where you just like, which layer do I exist on? Where's my API coming from? A lot of these testing and integration things are like, actually, what's the latency on this? Can I depend on this? What's the uptime? And we're seeing the API integration tools kind of market explode right now. So aside from technical platform, taking it from platform to ecosystem, because I think it's easy for anyone to step up and say, hey, I'm a platform. Sure, anyone can step up and say they're an ecosystem, but I think it's harder to prove you're an ecosystem, it's got to be a more organic, self-sustaining. So what's the number one thing you would say, and just working the way down, that is critical to achieve ecosystem within a platform?
I think for me anyways, when I think of it, there's some core really valuable services that that's providing that sort of creates the underlying value. If you're talking about Salesforce, it might be things related to the Salesforce APIs and functionalities. In the case of one of our partners is Boeing. They make airplanes, and they have airlines that are trying to be in their ecosystem using our paths. They are going to have a set of things and APIs that will bind and pull that ecosystem together. That makes it a real thing, right? That somebody will want to join and has. So I think that's a key thing, is that if you just take a bunch of APIs and say like, oh, this is a platform, this is an ecosystem, it may not have much staying power. But when there's something that really drives it like that, then you can get some real business value out of it.
Value.
I think maybe if you're asking, what's the definition of it, I think it's when you've achieved a critical mass of enough relationships where people are dependent on you for a service and you are dependent on them. And the commingling of what you provide and what somebody else provides comes together to form value. And it's really where the sum of the parts is greater than the individual pieces, right? And I think most people would probably agree that you have to have achieved a critical mass of that. So whether you have I don't know what's the number, 100, 500, 1,000 relationships like that is probably where you've achieved what I would consider an ecosystem.
Yeah, I think In my mind, platform is more about a single destination. You're going to the Facebook platform, but we've integrated with Facebook at StackMob to make it easy for people to leverage Facebook's identity management. So in a way, we're part of the Facebook ecosystem. We're outside of Facebook in their sort of internal platform that they control, but we rely on it. So we're really early as far as an ecosystem, but as I mentioned, like API Spark, unbeknownst to us, chose to talk to our API and start building their product around all these other backend as a service companies. I just did a sample integration with a cloud-based IDE to leverage StackMob because they just do the front end, but we do the back end. So I'm trying to foster those sort of partnerships or integrations where someone outside of StackMob's platform is actually leveraging us as part of their product and make, like you said, greater than the sum of the parts. So I think we're still early days, but I'm starting to see that ecosystem or potential for it.
Security? I'm just kidding. I don't.
I mean, you got to feel secure.
I know every
in
time you
this.
and I talk about, we always talk about
Yeah.
this. You know, you take the other view and I take the opposite view. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about it. Just pulling a leg. But where I want to see this go is, look, the API is all about providing people what they want and how they want in a manner they want. And having said that, I still see to an extent we are providing people on what we think they want, right? In conversations, multiple desk companies, I observed that, okay, I heard things here today, people were saying that API is UI to data kind of thing. So which means they're trying to expose some things, what they think their customers want, all right? But the problem is you're fixing on what you're exposing to the customers as opposed to give, by the way, I'm publishing a blog this week on this topic saying sort of like APIs any way you want it, meaning if somebody wants to use my data at the data level, and of course you have to do all the governance and security and policy associated with that and compliance and all that. But still, if you want at the data level, I'll give it to you at the data level, which means I give you bare bones, you build everything on top of it, the whole jazz. Or if you want me to provide logic on top of it, I'll give you data on logic, that's another API, and then you will use from that point onwards. So you can, if you think about it, you can actually progress all the way up to where you want the endpoint to be, either at the data level at the bare bones, or all the way up top close to your application that at the endpoint I'll provide you, and then you provide the rest of the piece of it. So that's where I think the value add is. Either I provide least possible value to you, or provide the most possible value to you, and then you build the rest of it, we go to market with that. And that's where I want to see things go. And some of my customers are thinking that way, which is good.
All right. So how are we looking there, Steve? Do we got time for a audience question, or should we wrap it up? I think we're getting pretty close. I decide. Do we got any questions out there you guys want to hit the panel with? No. You guys not get enough coffee? All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. But, I appreciate this conversation, guys. I recommend, checking out all of their definitions of what a platform is by going to their company sites. And I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.